Friends, today we shall discuss an entirely new but very different section of the IPC. So far, we have spoken of general exceptions, private defense, mens rea, and common intention. Now we are about to get into certain hardcore offenses, which after all form the crux of the IPC because it contains the offenses and the punishment for those offenses. Indian Penal Code, Tajirate Hind. So we are starting with offenses affecting the human body, and we are taking the ultimate offenses covered by Section 299 and Section 300 IPC. Section 299 is culpable homicide, and 300 IPC is murder. As you can see, there at the corner of the screen, somebody just got murdered, or maybe culpable homicide. Okay, so Section 299 defines culpable homicide. So culpable homicide is an offense committed by a person who causes death of somebody else. He causes the death of somebody else. And how does he cause that death? By doing an act, naturally, with the intention of causing death. He has every intention of causing the death of the person whom he has attacked or poisoned or whatever, or thrown off a cliff or strangled. He had the intention of causing a death, or he had the intention of delivering such body injury as is likely to cause death. So if somebody takes a knife, Mr. X takes a knife and hits somebody in the stomach and turns it around, he is delivering a body injury which he knows is likely to cause death. It's likely to cause death, whether he knows it or not. Or he cuts the femoral artery, in the thigh, the major artery. He cuts it with a knife. It is likely to cause death. Or with the knowledge that whatever he is doing is going to cause death. That means if he is going to administer poison to somebody, he knows that if I am giving poison, if X is giving poison to Y, then X knows that that poison is likely to cause the death of Y. Right? So there are three elements. The person who is causing the death, the accused, either had the intention of causing death, or he intended to cause such bodily injury as is likely to cause death. Or now in this, you see, intention of causing bodily injury as is likely to cause death does not have the element of knowledge in it. He just intended to cause bodily injury, which by virtue of evidence or by virtue of medical deposition or by virtue of the post-mortem report or by virtue of whatever, will be proven as is that it is likely to cause death. It was likely to cause death. Right? Suppose, for instance, somebody takes a large baseball or a cricket bat and hits somebody on the back of the head, full swing. He should know, or at least even if he does not know, he has the intention of causing this bodily injury. And this bodily injury to the head, we all know, is likely to cause death. Right? The third is, he has the knowledge also that he is likely, by whatever he is doing, is likely to cause death. Right? So I gave you the poisoning example. There can be another example. For example, X pushes somebody into the water. Say X pushes Y into the water and X knows that Y cannot swim. Right? Now his act is the pushing into the water. It's not an injury. It is not an injury. It is not a bodily injury. But he knows that if I push Y into the water, Y does not know swimming. And it is likely to cause the death of Y. So have I clarified the three elements? Intention of causing death, intention of causing such bodily injury as is likely to cause death, or knowledge that by the act which he is committing, that act is likely to cause death. So it is possible that the act which he has done, he has delivered a bodily injury, which in the normal course of events is likely to cause death. It may happen that person is rushed to hospital. If he had been rushed to hospital, if he had been administered oxygen or surgery or something, he may have survived. That is no defense. So explanation 2, which is the important explanation in this section, it says that although by resorting to proper remedies and skillful treatment, the death might have been prevented. It doesn't help. If the death has been caused by bodily injury, then the person who has caused the bodily injury will be deemed to have caused the death, notwithstanding that it would have been theoretically possible to save the injured person had medical attention been provided. But that is no defense, that is no excuse. So this is culpable homicide. The very interesting case is what I'm going to tell you. It's a very old case, but a very interesting case governing culpable homicide. This is Palani Goundan versus Emperor of the Madras High Court, delivered on 7th April 1919. 1919. Now what happened? The accused struck his wife with a violent blow on the head with a plowshare. What is a plowshare? You will see from this little picture which has been given here. A plowshare, a plow itself, a plow is something with which you plow the land. In Hindi they call it hal. Plowing the land for planting the crops, for seeding the crops. Before you plant the crops, whether you plant the seeds, what you do is you plow the land. It churns up the mud, throws up the nutrients, then you plant the seeds, then the irrigation, and then the... Now this complete picture is a plow, out of which this long handle which you see here is a plow shaft. And this thing which you see here, with which the actual plowing is done, and is usually of metal, always of metal, is a plowshare. So the accused had a plowshare and he hit his wife on the head with it. Now the wife did not die because of that. And the hit was not such a nature that it did not cause an injury which would have caused the death of his wife. So, first of all, he had no intention of killing his wife. There was an argument. He took the plowshare and he hit her on the head. So he had no intention of causing an injury. He had no intention of causing the death. He had no intention of causing a bodily injury which was likely to cause death. There was a violent quarrel. The plowshare was next to him. He took it up, hit his wife on the head with it, with no intention of causing death, with no intention of inflicting bodily injury likely to cause death. So she fainted. Right? Now, when she fainted, our accused thought, now she has died. How do I save myself? So what he did was, he hung her. He hung her. He hanged his wife, who was unconscious. The wife died due to the hanging. Now the second part. When he was hanging his wife, he did not think she was alive. He thought she was already dead. He wanted to create false evidence that she had committed suicide. So, while he was hanging his wife, he was not doing any act likely to cause death, because as far as he was concerned, death had already happened. He was not inflicting any bodily injury which was likely to cause death, because In his opinion, she was already dead. He also did not know that the act of hanging which he was doing would cause the death of his wife, because as far as he was concerned, the wife was dead. So the High Court held that the accused could not be convicted either of murder or culpable homicide because she did not die because of the plowshare blow. When she did not die because of the plowshare blow, he could not be convicted of murder or culpable homicide because her dying by hanging did not have the element of intention of causing death, intention of inflicting injury likely to cause death, or for that matter, knowing that the act he was doing was likely to cause death. So what was he really guilty of? The guilty of causing grievous hurt or hurt to his wife by assaulting her, and then for trying to create false evidence by hanging her. He was not aware that she was alive. So as far as he was concerned, he was creating false evidence. This case is important, though it's very old, because it brings out the elements of culpable homicide beautifully. The intention of causing death, the intention of causing a bodily injury likely to cause death, and knowledge that the act being committed is likely to cause death. Now we go on to section 300. This is the definition of 300, which I would like those of you who are interested can take a screenshot, or else it is available in the books as such. I've just put it there for the sake of record, because the next slide is important, where I will juxtapose, put together 299 and 300, and we will point out what are the exact differences. So if you will permit, this is just for a screenshot and for quick reading. The elements in this will come in more detail, in clarity, will give you clarity in the next slide. All right. So here we go. Culpable homicide is the genus and murder is the species. Now, those of you who have ever studied biology would know that genus is the larger qualification, species is the more specific qualification. For example, tiger, the scientific name of tiger is Panthera tigris, where Panthera is the genus and tigris is the species. Similarly, the scientific name for lion is Panthera leo. Now you would notice that the genus of the tiger and of the lion is the same, Panthera, because there's a broader classification. But the species is different. Lion is Leo, tiger is Tigris. Similarly, murder is a specific type of culpable homicide. This, if you are clear in your mind, you will never confuse between the two. Right? All culpable homicide is bound to include murder in it also. But all murder is not culpable homicide. All Panthera will include both lion and tiger. Right? So, the culpable homicide is the genus and murder is the species. Now, what is the difference? This chart brings it out very clearly. Section 299 says, by doing an act with the intention of causing death. We have done this. Similarly, section 300, that culpable homicide is murder if. It also says death which is caused by the intention of causing death. So if you will look carefully, the first portion of 299 is nearly the same or virtually the same as the firstly of section 300. You do an act with the intention of causing death, 299. Death is caused by something with the intention of causing death, same thing. So the first part is almost absolutely the same. So this is the generic part. They are same. Now come to B. B corresponds to the secondly and thirdly of 300. What is B? With the intention of causing such bodily injury as is likely to cause death. In the past case, I told you that his intention was not to cause bodily injury which would cause the death of his wife. He just hit her and she fainted. But in murder, if the intention of causing bodily injury, the accused knows that it is likely to cause death, first part. Secondly, so there's a difference. With the intention of causing bodily injury as is likely to cause death, knowledge is of no relevance. It's culpable homicide. But if he had the intention of causing bodily injury, which the accused knew would be likely to cause death, then that is murder. Then there is a thirdly, against that same portion. Here also he intends to cause bodily injury. Here also he intends to cause bodily injury to any person, and the bodily injury intended to be inflicted is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. Now, what is the difference between secondly and thirdly? I'll explain. First of all, with the intention of causing bodily injury as the offender knows to be likely to cause death. As I told you, somebody pushes somebody from the third floor. He knows that it is likely to cause death of that person when he lands 90 feet below on the cement pavement. He knows. So he is causing a bodily injury, fractured bones and what have you, to the deceased, and he knows that if I'm pushing him to the third floor, that is likely to cause death. Thirdly, with the intention of causing bodily injury, and the bodily injury intended to be so inflicted is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. It is not likely, it is sufficient by itself. There is no conjecture here, there is no likely here. It is sufficient. The word likely does not exist here. You see, this word likely in 299 does not feature in secondly and thirdly of murder. So there is no likely here in the sense that he knows. The likely comes later, but knowledge is most important in secondly. And the third, the injury itself is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. Now, what exactly would that be? Sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. Suppose I shut up a person in a room without, I break his teeth and I shut him in a room without food or water for 10 days. I know that the injury that I'm inflicting on him is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. The accused cannot say, sir, I just locked him up, I did not kill him. No. By confining him to the room, an injury has been caused. And that injury is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death if the man is not given food and water, if he is starved. So in the ordinary course of nature, a person who is starving will die at a point of time, unless he is given medical aid or food or liquid nourishment or whatever. So friends, whereas the A part is absolutely the same, B part is very different. Causing bodily injury as is likely to cause death is a different thing, right? Suppose X hits Y in the back with a hockey stick. Now it hits his neck. Now if his neck bone breaks, if his cervical bone breaks, it is likely to cause death. But if the same person accused, say X, hits Y with a hockey stick very hard on the back of the head with all his force, he knows that it is likely to cause death. The other one, bodily injury which is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. I gave you one example. I will give you another example. Accused ties the hands of the deceased with a rope, very tight. Ties his feet, ties his hands, puts a gag in his mouth. Deceased cannot go anywhere. Then what the accused does? He cuts the vein, the main vein of the accused. The bodily injury. In the ordinary course, he knows that, and even if he doesn't know, it is obvious that the blood will seep out, continue to leak from this cut vein, and it will cause death. Ordinary course of nature, blood which is flowing out will cause death. So there's a very great difference between culpable homicide and this portion, which is very clear. The third is the knowledge that he is likely by such act to cause death. He knows that such likely that if I throw somebody in a swimming pool, it is likely to cause his death. Fine. But in the case of murder, if the accused knows that it is so imminently dangerous that it will in all probability cause death or such bodily injury as is likely to cause death. So in the first case, if somebody is pushed into a swimming pool, it is likely to cause death. He may be rescued by somebody, the water may dry up, or he may, slap his way somehow or the other to the shore. But if he does, which is something so imminently dangerous, he causes an injury which is so imminently dangerous, or he does something that is so imminently dangerous. For example, X is the accused. Y is on oxygen and a ventilator and a drip. Now he removes the accused removes the oxygen. He knows that he has not caused any bodily injury, but the action that he has done is so imminently dangerous that the poor chap who is in bed will not survive beyond 2 minutes. He's lucky if he survives for 2 minutes. It must, in all probability, cause death. So, and it is imminently dangerous. It will be immediately dangerous. So this is the difference between culpable homicide, which is a general thing, and murder, which is specific. Although the first part, as you will notice, is absolutely identical, but secondly and thirdly are very different from B, and imminently dangerous is very different from simple knowledge. And I have given you the examples for differentiating these cases. Okay. Now, in Paul versus State of Kerala, it's a Supreme Court judgment of 2020. Latest judgment. What did the Supreme Court say? How do you go about? You have to stage by stage follow whether culpable homicide is actually murder. First of all, you have to check first stage whether accused has actually done something which has caused the death of the deceased. But death hua bhi hai, somebody has caused a death. First check that up. Person X has caused the death of Y. First part. Number two, whether that act amounts to culpable homicide as per section 29. Whether he had the intention of causing death or whether he had an intention of causing bodily injury likely to cause death, or whether he knew that the act was likely to cause death. So these three, was he aware? Then it is culpable homicide. Now come to the third stage, whether that culpable homicide is murder. So there you check, right, whether the bodily injury was intended to cause death itself and he knew it would cause death. Number two, it was sufficient in the ordinary course of events to cause death, or he had the knowledge that it was so imminently dangerous that it would cause death. If this part is satisfied, I will just go back to this previous slide for a second. Yeah. So after 299, clear he is culpable of homicide, no problem. Now, is it murder? Did he have the intention of causing bodily injury which he knew would be likely to cause death? Number two, did he intend to cause a bodily injury which was and it was inflicted and sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death? Whether he knew or not is immaterial. The bodily injury which he caused was sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. And thirdly, that he knew that it is imminently dangerous and it will probably cause death. Imminently dangerous, it will probably cause death. So, if after you establish 299, then if any of these factors, secondly or thirdly, or this fourth part, if any of these factors are satisfied, then it is murder. Otherwise, it is just culpable homicide. So, if these factors are not satisfied, or if the case comes within any of the exceptions to section 300, we'll come to that shortly. So either the provisions given in the previous table, if those requirements are not satisfied, the requirements given in the previous table for 300 murder are not satisfied, or it comes within one of the exceptions, or one of the private defense clauses which I have taught you applies. Right? 96 to 106. Acting in private defense for defense of body or property. You can go back to my lecture. So either private defense or self-defense and general exception, or exceptions which have been detailed in section 300, which I will come to shortly. If these apply, or if the conditions of section 300 are not satisfied, then it is only culpable homicide. It is not amounting to murder. Right? So the punishments for the two are different. Right? Culpable homicide punishment is not as bad as the punishment for murder. Now, thirdly of section 300 was dealt by the Supreme Court in 1958 case, Virsa Singh versus State of Punjab. The Supreme Court says that if the case has to come within this provision, that he intended to inflict a bodily injury and such bodily injury was sufficient in the ordinary course of events to cause death, how will you establish it and what is the legal significance of this? The court said, first of all, you establish that a bodily injury is present. The injury nahi hai, then the nature of injury has to be proved. Was it caused by a dao or a hasya or a knife or a gun or whatever, right? Now there was the intention to inflict that particular injury. That means it is not that I was practicing doing sword practice and somebody suddenly passed by and got hit on the neck. It was not accidental, right? Or we were standing together on the roof and suddenly there was a minor earthquake or something, and the other person was standing by my side. I fell on him, he fell from the roof. Whatever is unintentional or accidental is of course accepted. But if there was an intention to inflict that particular injury, and that injury is sufficient in the ordinary course of death, events to cause death in the ordinary course of nature, then it is thirdly satisfied. What did the court say? The court says it does not matter whether the original intention was to cause death. Thirdly, it does not say the intention to cause death. It says intention to cause a bodily injury. Then adds that and such bodily injury is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. So court said इसमें intention नहीं काम आएगा. Right? Unless it is accidental, unintended, that's different. Okay. But if somebody says, I did put a knife through my enemy's heart, but my intention was not to kill him. My intention was the knife should go down only to half an inch. It went down 2 inches. Sorry, that won't hold. So it really doesn't matter that I intended my knife to go only half an inch. It went 2 inches, so it penetrated his heart and he died. No. So it does not matter if there was no intention. It also does not matter that there was no intention to cause such an injury. What is important is that the injury caused, bodily injury caused, was sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to cause death. And knowledge is totally immaterial. Whether he had knowledge of what he was doing, that comes in the other part. It comes in the previous part, intention to cause a bodily injury which he knows is likely to cause death. The one above it, or the one below it, which he knows is so imminently dangerous that it will cause death. But in this particular thirdly, it is simply bodily injury, and the bodily injury which sufficient in the ordinary course of events to cause death. Intention, unless accidental or totally unintended, is of no relevance, and knowledge does not even count. Very important, my friends. Very important. An accused cannot argue in court that I did hit him fully, the disease fully. I ripped open his stomach with a sword, but I had no knowledge that it will kill him. I just thought his intestines would spill out. Sorry. I had no intention to kill him. I just wanted to punish him. No. Whether the injury of splitting open his stomach was sufficient in this bodily injury was sufficient in the ordinary course of events to cause death. This is thirdly. Now, exceptions. There are a few exceptions. Apart from, as I told you, private defense and general exceptions, which we have already done. But what happens if there is such a grave provocation, such a sudden provocation, solid provocation, that the accused would have lost the power of self-control, and then he reacts spontaneously, and by his reaction, the person who gave him the provocation dies. Right? Suppose there are two people who are arguing, and one says, your father was a thief and a robber, or he says something very wrong about his mother. Now this is a grave, and so why, when quarreling with X, says X, your mother was such and such, or whatever, some such thing. I leave it to your imagination. Now X is so provoked that he immediately, delivers a kick to the stomach of Y. The spleen ruptures and Y dies. A bodily injury has been inflicted. That bodily injury was sufficient, the spleen gets ruptured, was sufficient in the ordinary course of events to cause the death of Y. But it still is not 300. It is still not murder, because X acted under huge and sudden provocation. Now there are certain qualifications to that. The provocation should not be requested. X should not stand and say, you abuse my mother, then I will show you. No. That is not an excuse for killing or harming anybody. Number two, that provocation is not given by somebody who is acting under the guise of the law. So suppose a policeman comes and arrests X, and while arresting, X tries to resist, and the policeman gives him some badi gandi si gali. That does not justify killing the policeman, because the policeman was acting under his powers. Suppose the policeman also drags him out of home, and this man feels humiliated in society. X is arrested by the police and is taken out of his home. Entire colony is watching. He is a respectable member. He suddenly feels highly humiliated. Sorry, it is not That kind of sudden provocation by which he can kill the policeman. Similarly, if somebody is acting in private defense, it cannot be called provocation. If X is slapping Y and Y gives him a punch in return, X started by slapping Y, or X gave some some other cause of concern, or X is committing a robbery at the residence of Y, right? And then Y says, you are a robber and a thief and you are an idiot, etc., and tries to stop him. That is not a provocation. If Y even takes out a lathi to stop X, who is a robber, that is not a provocation by Y. He is acting in the right of private defense. So, exception 1. Exception 2. Sometimes it can happen that in a case of grave provocation or in the case of private defense, either of the person or the property, people will act, their reaction will be more than required, and thereby death occurs. Right? Somebody tries to snatch my watch. Now that is my property. He tries to snatch my watch. In the process, I am so angry and in a fit of anger. He is snatching my watch, I push him and then I drive my car over him. It goes over him. Not necessarily intending to do, but it is done by me. So I have caused a bodily injury which is sufficient in the ordinary course of nature to kill that robber. But I have exceeded the power. Snatching my watch, self-defense, I could have hit him. I could even have broken his arm. But I have exceeded that power of self-defense, private defense given to me. But I have acted without premeditation and without intending to do that harm. I had no intention of driving my car over him. I reacted in. So it may be culpable homicide, but it is not murder. That is the exception. Right? The third, public servant. This we have already done. If somebody is acting as a public servant and he is trying to enforce the law or doing something under the law, he causes death by doing something in good faith, which he regards as lawful and necessary. So, see, a policeman is chasing a dacoit. Now, as he is chasing a dacoit, 3-4 policemen are chasing 2-3 dacoits, and as they are catching up, the dacoit takes out a toy gun. Now, the policemen are not knowing that the dacoit has pulled out a toy gun. They see something that looks like a gun. So immediately the police wala draws his gun and shoots, killing the dacoit. So he has acted in good faith. He has believed it is lawful and necessary, and it was without ill will towards the person. Now it may or may not be treated as culpable homicide also, but it is definitely not murder. So this is yet another exception. The fourth exception is very important. If the death is caused in a sudden fight, in the heat of passion, without premeditation, there is a sudden quarrel, and the accused did not take undue advantage or did not act in a very cruel or unusual manner, then it is not murder, it is culpable homicide. As you will see in this cartoon which I have put here, 2 people on the road rage. Why did your car overtake me when there was no place? You idiot, you don't know how to attend a car. So they come out they get out of the car and they come out on the road. Then they start, abuses are hurled, while abuses are hurled, and in the North India, abuses are very freely traded, right? But it generates a lot of passion. There's a quarrel, and they start hitting each other. Now, in that hitting each other, one is a trained karate champion, and the other is an ordinary person. Now the karate champion in the heat of the moment delivers a kick which kills the other person. Now it is culpable homicide because he has inflicted an injury which is likely to cause death. He had the intention to deliver that bodily injury, and he delivered that injury, so he has caused the death. He has acted in a manner likely to cause death. So a karate kick to a vulnerable portion of the body is likely to cause death. Right? But it is not murder. It is only culpable homicide. Because what he did because of the sudden fight. Fight was not premeditated. They had not each planned when coming out of home that we will reach this place, get out of our cars and start fighting each other. It was a sudden quarrel. It was a very passionate quarrel. Both sides got very agitated. Then they started fighting suddenly. So in these cases, you don't stop to see who offered the provocation. The person who got down from the Toyota was the one who offered the provocation to the Honda, or the person who got down from Honda offered the first provocation to the person who got down from the Toyota. It is really pointless. In a bilateral quarrel, sudden quarrel, heat of passion, there is no premeditation, no planning, no intention. It is impossible to decipher, it is irrelevant. What is more important is that if somebody dies because of this sudden passion, it is not murder, it is at worst only culpable homicide. So in Dilip Mondal versus State of West Bengal, 2015 case by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court said that exception 4, which is that sudden fight, extreme provocation, a sudden fight, passion, extreme passion, can be invoked if the death is caused without premeditation. There is no pre-planning that we will go and fight there and we'll kill each other. No, it's a sudden fight. It breaks out for the lousiest of reasons. Or for whatever reason, it breaks out. There are people standing in a queue for tickets to a cinema show, which is a box office hit. And then somebody tries to cross the line and take the ticket from the window. X stops him and Y says, no, I will bloody well take the ticket. And there is a sudden fight. Heat of fight, very passionate, hot words, etc., etc. And then suddenly X does something at that time by which Y dies. It would be culpable homicide, it could be culpable homicide, but it is not murder. It is saved by exception 4 to section 300. Now, neither party should take undue advantage or act in a cruel or unusual manner. So, two persons are fighting at the ticket window. They are fighting and a kick is delivered or a blow is delivered, or both have taken out sticks and are beating each other, and one delivers a blow which is fatal. That's a different matter. But if X grapples with Y, holds him down and puts his knee on his neck and sits there, that is cruel and unusual. X and Y, sudden fight. Then X pushes Y, Y falls down. X then kneels on the neck of Y and keeps it in that position. The Y will not survive that after 2-3 minutes. This is an unusual or cruel reaction. The fight may have been unpremeditated. It may have raised passions. There may have been a quarrel, but the reaction of X was cruel and unusual. Number 2, the fight must have been with the person who was killed. So two people are fighting. The relative of one comes and says, "Arey baba, mat lado yaar. Please don't fight. Please stop it." So relative of Y comes and says, "Don't fight. Stop it." X is already so angry. He goes and hits Y with a lathi or something. So Y was nowhere in the fight, poor chap. He was not part of the passionate quarrel. The fight has to be with the person killed. The court says it takes two to make a fight. If it is unpremeditated, premeditated, if it is sudden, both are equally guilty of the fight. And heat of passion requires, there is no time intermediate. but things could have cooled down. It is not that two-person fight at the ticket window of a cinema, then one of them goes home and half an hour, 1 hour later returns and then kills the other. He has had the time to cool down. If he has had the time to cool down, then it is not a fight. That passions had been generated and X has acted in the heat of the moment, at the height of the passion. Whether the fight is with or without weapons depends on the situation. Right? It depends on the situation. Two persons who are fighting, as I said, they may have hockey sticks in their hand, they have baseball or cricket bats in their hand, or they may suddenly, bend down and pick up stones, start hitting each other with stones. That is another matter. It can be with or without weapons, but it has to be a combat between two or more persons. It has to be the heat of passion. It has to be unpremeditated, and it should not extend to the killing of a non-combatant, somebody who is not in the combat, somebody who is not in the fight. So, friends, that is all for today. I hope everybody has understood what I said. In any case, you can go through my lecture as many times as you wish on YouTube. Thank you very much. Good day.